Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Marshall Sanders. Back to you for a quick video. This one won't take too long. But I've had many ask the question about this, and I've heard many state this about things that, excuse me, burping here. I shouldn't have eaten dinner before I did this, I guess. But they asked concerning stereotypes. Of course, when someone views you as a stereotype, they do not view you as an individual, but rather accusation and a preponderance of ignorance rather than a preponderance of facts. So I'm going to address some of the things that are black stereotypes. I'm also going to turn the sword around on the accusers. So, stay with me for a moment. And let's go to our old friend Joseph Goebbels. I'm sorry, you don't know who that is. Well, he was the propaganda minister of Adolf Hitler. Oh, so you did not know that the white matrix is very much Nazi inclusive. Hmm. So, let's go here to our not so good friend Joseph Goebbels and his quote on these things. Joseph Goebbels says, accuse the other side of that which you are guilty of. I'll repeat that. Joseph Goebbels says, accuse the other side or your enemies of that which you yourself are guilty of. Smart man, Goebbels, but not exactly a moral man. So, I'm going to address some things that are stereotypes of people of color in continuation of my last video. Let's address the first one. Black people are lazy. Do you believe that? Well, Joseph Goebbels said it doesn't matter. If you're guilty of it, just accuse the other side. Let me ask you a question. How deep must the matrix be if you can acknowledge that people work day and night, were beaten, raped, diminished in every possible form as a human being? Picking cotton, which was even itself a very laboring process, even if you picked a few things of cotton. Physically painful, required high skill not to end up in a very, very bad physical situation. Lack of medical care, such other things. And to work that schedule, producing what in today's value would be 200 plus trillion dollars in economic process. And yet you would consider these people to be lazy. And just by curiosity, those who benefited and did not work hardly at all, what would you consider them to be? Interestingly so, if you watch a television show, though I've never fully watched the show because I'm not a person who watches television for entertainment, I watch it for information. This particular show was called The Office, and people said that this accurately reflects the atmosphere of office in America businesses. Well, basically, the people sat around the water cooler and made jokes and did very little productive work. This was white collar work. Most of the people, of course, are not black. In fact, the very, very smallest majority of those people, or minority of those people, I should say, would be black. And yet, they are not accused of being lazy and not seeking a job. But blacks are accused of that. Looks like Joseph Goebbels strikes again. Let's try another one. Chicken and watermelon. Blacks love chicken and watermelon. You know you have a black person because they love chicken and watermelon. Thank you, Goebbels, for bringing that one up. You see, that is almost true. Meaning, I would almost, in my opinion, say that most blacks like either chicken, watermelon, or maybe even both. But do you know why blacks like mostly chicken and watermelon? Do you have any idea historically why? Well, during slavery, blacks had basically one diet that they were allowed. Not to say that no black ever ate it, but the preponderance, the majority of blacks were only allowed to eat certain parts of the swine. See, a sign of wealth that you were eating healthy and that you was a picture of wealth and stability was the white slave owner. After all, if you ate chicken, it showed that you were eating a domestic animal, and it was a good animal, and even to this day we know that it is good to eat. And watermelon expressed a lot of other things. It meant that your land had a lot of water. And it also was a sign of prestige, especially in a culture that did not have a lot of cooling locations. Sure, there were shades, but there certainly wasn't AC. So, of course, you needed to be hydrated, and water was something that was desired. So, to have a particular fruit that had a lot of water in it would allow you the nutrition and the water to nourish you. So, whites loved chicken and watermelon. And so, after the slaves, who couldn't even eat the normal parts of the swine, were given the head and the guts of the pig, which is why to this day so many African American people and people of color like what they call soul food or hog maws and chitlins, the guts of the swine, and the head and the brain of the swine, which they make something called Brahma stew. I never ate Brahma stew, but my parents made it routinely, once a year at least, all the time. Chicken and watermelon? Yes, a lot of blacks do. But we learned that from whites. Number 3, sex addicts. This is the biggest wow. of this video. Because when you think of sex addicts or people that may be tempted to rape, there is a almost written record of the rapes continuously, of the human trafficking, of the slave owners, who were almost exclusively white slave owners and traffickers and rapists and serial rapists at that. So, how do they get it that blacks are rapists? Well, it is that old ally of ours. Well, I'm being sarcastic. The white matrix and propaganda. You see, we did it to you. Therefore, we can have an expectation that that is what you want to do to us. Well, while there are individuals who are black, white, and otherwise that like sex, there are very few blacks that have a history of wanting to rape, and serial rape anyone, much less whites. Again, I do not stand up for all black people. Neither do they stand up for me or stand for me. But to say that a people have a fear that other people will do something to them in a stereotypical way when you have done it to them for 400 years continuously, well, that's a wow on why you would think people of color should be feared over those who have been shown they need to be feared for so long. Now, while this does not indict all white people in America, it may not even indict, at this point in history, even half of the people that are white in this country. It certainly cannot be contributed to that much of people in America that are black. Number 4, black people are cowards. They are afraid. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. After all, the average slave owner would have 10 slaves on his property that could easily have overpowered him, taken his land, and killed him. So that means you're a coward, correct? No, it does not. It means you're peaceful. Do you know that there were more insurrections and violent protests, if you want to call them that, by white women than there were of black slaves? Did you know that? Do people accuse white women and groups of them of being violent protesters in this nation and should watch out for them? And yet, despite being in slavery for essentially 400 years in this country, it could be counted on perhaps 2 hands the amount of violent protests that black slaves did despite outnumbering others. But this is a question of cowardice, right, Marshall? Do you know that blacks volunteered and fought in every war in America history? And they were so pushing to want to fight for their country, the country that had refused them in every possible way, that had betrayed them, and had made them nothing but second-class citizens or beasts in the field. They would even refuse to be able to fight with many whites, and yet still persisted to even find a way to fight because of their bravery and lack of cowardice. Amongst those are two of my uncles. Well, three of my uncles, and probably many more that I'm just escaping me today. But black people are cowardice. Well, that's kind of confusing. Are they cowards or are they gangsters? Because you also have the criminality of today, and especially in the inner cities, where you say they're shooting each other like dogs or like enemies. Well, I think it's pretty much clear that if you can go in front of a gun and use a gun, you're not exactly a coward to go and face almost certain death. You may be misled and you may be a person that's criminal, but you certainly aren't a coward. Let's go to another one. This may not seem like it makes much sense because this will be the final one I'm addressing. To 90%, if not more, of anybody that's going to ever see this video, you're going to think this is a waste of your time. I promise you, I'm not here to waste your time. I'm here to educate you. I'm here to at least put into your mind the opportunity to come out of the white matrix. Let me read this to you. Born with monkey tails. I know. That one got you. That's why I left it for the last one, by the way. Did you know that 1960 was 80 years ago? I'm sorry, 60 years ago. My math is not so well today, is it? But 1960 was 60 years ago. I was born in 1970. But do you know one of the things that was taught to people that were white, if you want to say it that way, was that they taught to their children, even at a young age, that black children are all born with a monkey's tail. Now, some of you going, perhaps almost all of you were watching this and going, that's absolutely funny if it wasn't so ridiculous. But do you know that many believe that? They were told that, and they believe that. How much so? Let's go here. I had a computer repair business, repair and sales. Very, very successful business. I was one of what you could call wealthy person until I became politically active. And then they did everything they can to destroy my business and my reputation. Because truth to a liar is something that must be extinguished. Now, I'm not bitter about that because it has given me an opportunity to reflect and to learn who my friends and who my enemies are. However, I digress. But while I was selling several years ago, I became so busy and I sold to businesses and I sold to individuals around the world, by the way, through the means of online sales as well as local sales. Now, I went to one place that was local to me that is a fire department. Apparently, someone saw my ad for a refurbished laptop. I believe it was a Lenovo laptop. and wanted me to bring it to their fire station. So I took off in my car, my Mercedes at the time, and I drove it to the fire station and met the guy there. He examined the laptop. He loved the laptop and the features. And while I was leaving, he said, we have some old laptops sitting around here at the Arlington Fire Department. Would you like to take those with you as well? I said, sure, of course. Can always use parts and such other things. Helps me keep the price of these things low and such other things. So they said, great. There you are. So normally my process is whether something works or not work in terms of a laptop or computer. My whole idea is to wipe out the information almost immediately. Why? Because I do not want other people's information to be leaked to me or to anyone else. My priority for my customers is absolute security of the information. However, when we talk about a person who is a professional, there are times when I have to take out the hard drive and I have to review whether they gave me something that had information that is very vital to their job and such other things. And being that these men were professionals, professional jobs, and kept information that is vital at times, sometimes I'll go through, very briefly, that is, the hard drive to ensure there's nothing important that I don't have to call the customer back, remind them, and make sure that I have to save information for them until they can retrieve it. Well, one such time, I was simply coming through and had gotten to the documents and saw that there was not any documents. Had gone to pictures and was going to leave the pictures when I saw that there were a group of pictures. They seemed to be important at first. So I clicked on the folder to open it up to expand, and there were multitudes of pictures. Well, normally I would be right then ready to call back the client and asking them whether the pictures are necessary. But while I was just about to do so, out of the corner of my eye saw what one of the pictures was saying. It was a picture of a monkey with a banana. And the monkey looked rather ridiculous. It had some kind of hat, had some other things in its present that made the effect of it being really a clown like low IQ type of monkey or orangutan or whatever it was in the monkey family. And the caption of it said, "At least I'm not an N word." I was shocked, to say the least, that this would be on the laptop of a professional because it got me thinking, how many races are in the Arlington police department, fire department rather, and how many houses would they have let burn down because they noticed that the person was a person of color, and how many of them would have subscribed to all blacks or have monkey's tail when they're born. Well, curious. I actually looked through a whole bunch of those pictures. In every one of those pictures, not one black face, but there were countless jokes, if you want to call them that way, and insults about blacks having tails. And in the presence of all these whites were just whites. None black or any person of color on vacation, or in a group photo, or at work photo, or family outings, or any other such thing. So, to answer this question of the stereotype of some who may watch this, no, blacks are not born with monkeys' tails, nor do we act as a group, that is, like monkeys. That is reserved for people who actually have the behavior of monkeys. So, Goebbels strikes again, accusing those of that which you yourself are guilty of. Now, I know for sure that whites are also not born with monkey tails, because we are not monkeys, we are human beings, though many have resorted to the behavior of a monkey. But I thought I would answer some of these questions about stereotypes. And if the last one seems rather ridiculous, it's because it is ridiculous. And to the majority of you out there, you've never even heard of such ridiculousness. But that's the white matrix, isn't it? Forget reality. Forget whether something is true or not. Forget whether you yourself do it every single day or not. Because hypocrisy is the very definition of the white matrix. So, let's get those things out of the way concerning the stereotypes. You will find some black people that are lazy. You will find some that love chicken and watermelon. You will find some that are sex addicts and that will rape a white woman, a black woman. Hey, you will even find some that would rape an animal. You will find some cowards. And yet, most of the people that are on white matrix are white. And they still do not want to face the reality outside of the white matrix. Do you think that applies to you? And finally, something that we can all unite on. No, white or blacks are not born with tails as monkeys are. Now, good thing is we're on the way out of the white matrix. At least my series, we're out on the way out of it. And I'm going to start making proposals on the basis that you understand that these stereotypes are things that you do not need to be fearful of when you're deciding whether to unite with people of color to getting out of this matrix. After all, who wants to go to war with a sex-crazed coward? I know I certainly wouldn't. But if you have it in mind that that is what people of color are, please let me assure you, though many enjoy chicken and watermelon and sex, they're not born with tails. And they will not run when they see that it would be a great benefit to themselves and their people if they fight, especially when they have someone who was once an enemy combatant fighting alongside with them. This is Marshall Sanders, Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful day, a good morning, a good afternoon, a good evening. Shalom to you all.